curated by ARTSail Executive Director and dear friend, Ombretta Agró Andruff. Today we'll learn about the practice and the work of three of the exhibiting artists, Deborah Mitchell, Christina Pettersson, and Jenna Efrein, and also from activist and educator of Sierra Club, Diana Umpierre. And of course, we want to invite you to stay a little longer after this conversation and join us in the gallery for the opening reception of this meaningful, important exhibition. And I would like to acknowledge that this program is made possible with the support of Funding Arts Broward, Broward Cultural Division, and Culture Builds Florida. And I also want to give a shout out to the ArtServe team for their passion and hard work. And without further ado, I would like to invite Ombretta to take it away. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Huge thank you to Sophie and everybody here at ArtServe. It has been such a pleasure to working with you all and to be able to show this beautiful and very important exhibition, as Sophie mentioned. So just a quick introduction about myself and ARTSail. As Sophie said, my name is Ombretta Agró Andruff. I am a curator and a climate activist, and I started ARTSail about 5 years ago, and for me it was really a way to merge my passion for the arts and my background as a contemporary art curator with a new Kindle passion for the ocean and everything that has to do with ocean conservation and essentially this beautiful ecosystem that is in our own backyard. And the idea was to bring together artists and cultural producers with scientists, marine activists, climate activists, and responsible businesses, and really enable the artists to understand how climate change and man-made pollutions are impacting the ecosystem around us, and to create outcomes to be able to communicate those issues, not just the issues, but also just the sheer beauty of what surrounds us so that people can fall in love with it and learn about how to make things better and how they can change their own behavior in their daily life to essentially ensure that business doesn't continue as usual. This specific exhibition, the genesis goes actually back to about a year ago. We created a conversation, an online conversation with ArtServe and ARTSail that was looking at the Lake Okeechobee and all the problematics around Lake Okeechobee, and it was the result of a series of expeditions that Christina, who's here, and she's been our almost year and a half artist in residence, and I'm so blessed to be able to work with her. But we really wanted to understand the Lake Okeechobee and the problematics around it. And we created this conversation. And out of this conversation, Sophie approached me with the idea to curate an exhibition about Florida wetlands as a whole, and really looking at the Everglades and understanding the beauty, the fragility of the ecosystem, and how so many artists that are Florida-based or are living or have had the experience of being in Florida for a certain amount of time create works around the ecosystem and its importance and its fragility and why we should care about it. So this panel is going to do exactly this. We have the great blessing to have with us Diana Umpierre from the Sierra Club, and she's going to be providing sort of a general introduction about the Everglades, why they're so important, and the activism and the Sierra Club and the importance of the organization, again, in protecting and restoring the ecosystem. And then we're going to go in the order that you see: Deborah Mitchell, Christina Pettersson, and Jenna Efrein. And they're all going to talk about their work that you'll be able to see then in the exhibition and why they're doing what they're doing. I'm not going to read their bios because it would just take too long and it's boring. So if you guys want to introduce yourself, say a few words about who you are and sort of what you do, please feel free. Again, it would just take me too long to read about all their amazing accomplishments. And I think, Diana, the floor is yours, and thank you for doing the land acknowledgement. I really appreciate that. Okay. And again, thank you everybody for being here. Thank you to our sponsors. And I really hope you'll learn about the Everglades. And for those of you who don't know about this amazing environment, I hope after this talk and this exhibition, you want to go see and explore and really feel and understand what it is with your own eyes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hi, so my name is Diana. and that's all you need to remember. And forget the last name. We'll get too many pronunciations that they're always all messed up. So my story, my love for the Everglades did not start right away. In fact, I think when I first moved here, I really wasn't very fond of the Everglades. There's this thing called mosquitoes that are pretty annoying. But what ended up really the passion for the Everglades was the day that my son gave me a telescope. I had been a fan of astronomy and stargazing in general all my life. And so I had this toy. And what ended up happening is I realized that for me to go and actually enjoy this new toy and be able to enjoy and look at the sky, I could not do it from my backyard. I had to go deep into the Everglades. And that really is what started my activism. It's realizing that we were having problems with access of places where we could go at night to enjoy, starry nights or fireflies. And also that we didn't have, things in place to protect these lands. So the activism started around that time, and which led to, some of you may know that Big Cypress National Preserve is now an international dark sky park. And that was thanks to a lot of efforts, and I like to think that I had a little bit to do with it. So Everglades restoration, at Sierra Club, this is something that they've been working on for, oh gosh, many decades. I've only started working with them in 2016. But the main focus on our work is to really try to kind of bring the importance of actually restoration of the actual ecosystem versus just fixing the fixes that have to constantly be fixed and fixed and fixed and fixed. That's at least the hope. Now, my job as an organizer is very different from what I did when I was in school. I went to school for geology. My job, really the best way to summarize it is with these two images. One is to be a movement builder by really growing a snowflake, right? And a snowflake just keeps on growing and it keeps on growing, right? And it's motivating people to form teams. And with those teams, they themselves form other teams, and so that's the idea of a snowflake. So that's one. And the second is to help people, what we call to climb that ladder of leadership, right? Everybody that wants to get involved usually starts, at least some, tend to start shy. They're not sure what they can do, what they can contribute. So part of the work of an organizer is kind of helping people to find how they can bring their own skill set. That you don't have to be a huge proficient speaker to be a leader. There's a lot of different ways, and so that's part of, again, that part of that job is how do we enlist people to care. So before we started, I'm not going to read all the stuff that's on the slide, but it is important to acknowledge, especially in this beautiful place that we are, with so many talented artists, which is one of them is not me. There were artists before any of us were here, and the first people that were here, pretty much none of them are here, at least not that I'm aware of. Many of them, the Kesta, the Calusa, and I don't think I'm going to remember saying all the other names. But when Ponce de Leon came in and he put his thing and he says, this is La Florida, there were really already people that were here. And many of them, in fact, were artists, of all different forms and shapes, types. And so long history, I'm not going to go through all these things, but among the things that ended up happening is that as all these different people were moving and being displaced, among them were the people that live here, the Seminole and the Miccosukee tribe. And they themselves are amazing artists. So I just want to acknowledge that important background. So we go in here and, we start discovering this amazing thing called Florida. And you know how it is, every time that we love something, we just seem to attract more and more people. And And at that time, back in the beginning of the century, people really didn't have a really good understanding and appreciation of the function of wetlands, right? It just, there were all kinds of terms that people would use, wastelands, but I don't know, there are all kinds of derogatory terms that you see in the history books, where people they just think that they're things that need to be drained, okay? And that really was something that started in the early actually late 1800s to early 19th. And we live here in Broward, where a county that is named after, a governor that decided that we're going to drain this ecosystem. We're going to build lots of farms, bring tourism, do all these things. And then on the West Coast, we have similar issues. We had people with, the ability to buy land, and they bought lots and lots and lots of land. By the 1920s, I think if you go with the previous slide, if you go in that, you had, by the 1920s, over 1 million acres were purchased. Something on the right that I like pointing out is there's a whole history over Tamiami Trail and how it came out to be. But if any of you have ever been on the Everglades, there's this beautiful road that is called Loop Road, that was originally going to be the path of this trail. Next slide. And I'll mention that because, that's one of our favorite places where we go and photograph. So while all these things are happening, there are starting to be signs of activism, right? And it shows up in a lot of different ways. And it's probably not surprising to those of you that are artists, especially those that write, the incredible influence that writing has, right? And we all know about Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, very famous, but very few people actually know about Minnie Moore Wilson and the important influence that she had at a time when women could not vote, right? She didn't have a right to do those things that now we can do. And so she was one of the first people that I like to point out as to the work that she did to document. And she particularly paid a lot of focus onto the relationship between the indigenous tribes that were there and the ecosystem. So I just wanted to acknowledge her. This is Loop Road today. I am so thankful that Tamiami Trail didn't go through it. I wish I could show you that photo on the bottom right. You can see that's, my little outback with my dog in there. And these are all photos taken by my son. We take them day and night. And at night, we actually get to see the Milky Way from Loop Road. Next slide. Okay, so come the 1920s and 30s and so forth. And, and we want to grow. We want to, have more farms and bring more homes and do all these things. And we keep on draining. And a really important thing that happened at that time, you go back, I'm sorry, to the other slide, is in 1928, there was a really horrific hurricane. And because of the way that the dike around the lake was, we ended up, losing thousands of people. And if any of you ever read the book, The Eyes Were Watching God, it was that event that kind of inspired part of that story. Next slide. Marjorie, I think everybody knows Marjorie and how influential she was. The part that I like to point out in here is when she wrote her famous book. It was 1947 when she wrote it. Okay, next slide. Because in 1948, here comes Army Corps of Engineers, I love you, but we have this love relation. They come in with this plan that they call the Central South Florida Flood Control Project, our canal system. That was in 1948. And at the time, it was said that it would be a practical and a permanent solution to our problems of flood protection, water control. This thing, it was constructed between that period, the 50s, and I think by around early 70s is when it was completed. By the 1960s, we're already seeing devastation over connecting parts of the ecosystem that were not supposed to be connected. And we all know the toxic algae blooms, they've made headlines. I mean, they've been going on ever since we tried to re-engineer and put this so-called permanent solution. While all those things are happening, I'm kind of mentioning the things that happen in between, because there's artists, there are people that do things that really have an incredible impact. And the highwaymen, I got to meet one of them. I used to work at the water management district at one point, and one time they you know, one of them, I don't remember which of them was, came in and I remember him having these amazing images. And so I want to acknowledge, you know, again, the incredible influence that they had, especially in making sure that, you know, we realize that the amazing artists that we have in, you know, people of color in the community. Next slide. And then comes around 2000, and again, well, the so-called permanent solution didn't work, so now we're going to fix the other solution. And now we've been in this thing called the SERP, or Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan. We're still working on it. Next slide. This is one particular project that tends to make a lot of headline news, and I'll be honest, I always get a heart attack by the different ways that it gets called. I think the last one that I heard was somebody calling it the crown jewel. Because what is really going to be is going to be a huge pool that is going to be more than 2 times the depth of Lake Okeechobee itself, storing extremely polluted, nutrient-rich water. And so we have concerns that once again, what is supposed to be the solution is going to need to be fixed all over again. We fast forward, there's all these things that are going on. You know, it's sad. I wish we could just say that, you know, all the threats are over and we can just, but it is an ongoing battle, right? And so we have all these things. Next slide. These are some of the projects that I particularly have been more involved in terms of doing organizing work. Some of them have probably heard, you know, at least before the pandemic, there was noise about this so-called American Dream Miami. I call it the Nightmare Mall. That is going to be a humongous thing with like skis, you know, I don't know, ski slopes and everything in it. There's all kinds of things that are still being planned in Homestead that are really problematic. Next slide. And I go back to the beginning, why I got involved, and one of the things that, why I wanted to end with this, because during the day, we see the devastation, right? We see it when, you know, all the bills that we pay, right, in order to have the water that we have. But we're also affecting this amazing ecosystem at night, an ecosystem that has fireflies. How many of you did not know that there are fireflies in South Florida? There are. There really are. It is amazing. Yeah, it really is. So the National Park Service had come down, again, during this early part that I was over, and they went and they did this whole night sky photography. Next slide. And you could see the differences. This is in Dry Tortugas, right? This is like west of Key West, where you can kind of see the Milky Way out there and the things that you see at the bottom. Some of them are boats and some of them are like little light domes from like Key West and so forth. Next slide. We get closer, we're in Big Cypress, right? And in Big Cypress, we can still get the sky glow from Miami-Dade, from Broward County. Okay, go back here, one more, go back again. There's one that I'll point out. You see that thing that says the Links of Naples? That's, yeah, that's 22 miles away. That's a golf course that's lit up the entire night. Okay, next slide. Okay, next one. Next. Okay, we're in Everglades National Park, and again, we're losing more and more of that beautiful night sky. Next slide. How many of you have gone to Shark Valley? Right. This is what it looks like at night. Next slide. Biscayne National Park. And last one. Oh, I think we'll have 2 more. There's almost Night sky left. Next. Next. And I'll end with this so one of the things that I'm trying to do as part of the work that I do on Everglades is kind of bring this component of the importance, the relationship between water and the sky, and the night and the day. And I'm glad if any of you visit everglades.darksky.org, it'll take you to this website and some of the artwork that actually was created in there. And the last, can you guess what those little green dots are? Those are fireflies. And you see the comet? That was the famous comet Neowise in 2020. That horrific year. That was really an amazing moment at such a painful time. And so this is it on my end.
Made it just on time. Thank you, Diana, so much. And what I loved about the presentation, and I think something that I missed, and when I started talking about the show, what I'm trying to do with this exhibition and with the programming that we're creating around it, it's about connecting the dots, right? And so connecting the historical dots, like you know, very well done, and the ecosystem, and the idea that it's one watershed, it's one water system that is all connected. So essentially what happens in the Kissimmee River and Lake Okeechobee will eventually have an impact in Florida Bay. And I think that a lot of the artists that are part of the exhibition are really capturing that essence that often escapes people because you think there's so much distance in mileage in between, again, the Kissimmee River and Florida Bay, and sometimes one might not think that it's all just one large ecosystem, and that because of the drainage and the agricultural land that has come out as a result of that, we interrupted that original flow of water with all the nasty consequences that you just touched upon, and I know we could be here for hours talking about it. I just want to say one quick thing that I forgot, that this exhibition is dedicated to Maggie Urchala. Maggie was a fantastic, unique force of nature, environmental activist. She was a mentor. She was someone who has dedicated her entire life to protect the Everglades and protect the ecosystem. And Christina and I had the amazing opportunity last year to go kayaking with her. And she passed away in February, just as I was starting to work on this exhibition. And so I just wanted to dedicate this exhibition to her, because she's a force that still inspires us and will inspire many of us for many years to come. And with this, Deborah, the floor is yours. Okay. Thank you.
How can you hear me? Okay? How's everybody doing? Great. Yeah? That was pretty inspiring what Diana put together. It was very much the Everglades history in a nutshell and gave you an idea of where we are now, but she's pretty humble. So I just wanted to let you know that this is a woman who has won many awards for her activism. When I last saw her at the Coalition Conference, she was receiving some outstanding accolades. So it's an honor to be on the stage with you. And thank you, colleagues, and Ombretta for inviting us. It's just a wonderful show. I hope you all enjoy it. My name is Deborah Mitchell. I'm a mixed media artist, Scottish parents, born in Canada, raised primarily in Fort Lauderdale and Pompano Beach. So this is sort of like a homecoming to me. And I'm floored that one of my friends for over 40 years is in the audience tonight. So it's really lovely to be here and share what I'm doing now with you. So essentially my work is mixed media. It's experience-based. I often don't start with one thought and then research it and then produce an artwork. I usually go out in the field, get interested in something, and then I go all in. The last several years I've been super excited to work on a long-term project called Wild Observations, where I'm able to go to field stations and work with biologists and associated people in the field and take that work then to the public, hopefully elevating outreach and getting people just like you really interested in getting out there and working for our environment. Because just like Ombretta said in her opening remarks, we all need to do more, and we can do more. And Diana was saying earlier, it should be Earth Day every day. So if we all just adjust what we do, who we elect, and what we're thinking, maybe we can leave a better place for our kids. And thank you. Thank you. So that's why I do what I do. That was the question we were supposed to answer up here. And essentially, when I got pregnant 23 years ago, I heard I was going to have a boy. So I just figured, I'm all in. I'm hiking, I'm fishing, I'm kayaking, let's go. And I kind of haven't stopped since. And so it's been a real privilege to meet the people that I do work with who've helped me along the way. My installation out there is primarily based on collections. So I have that first kind of booth off to the right where there are images of preserved and saved spoonbills from Everglades National Park, great horned owl from Archbold Biological Station. The panther skull was taken not far from Loop Road that you referenced earlier, out on Birdon Road, thanks to the Big Cypress National Preserve Library. So it really has taken a lot of people to kind of help me along the way. I would not be here without the help of all those people. eBird, the folks at Cornell, inspired the cabinet that's called the Endangered Species Act. So if you have a chance to check that out and really go in close, I transcribed with a paintbrush sections of the Endangered Species Act on the cabinet with several of mostly the bird species, because it was a Cornell Zoom I was listening to during the pandemic when I worked on it. So that's why I do what I do, is to try to make a difference. Using my artwork is really the best tool I can figure to use, and just making a lot of nurturing contacts along the way so that web of people, like that slide that you showed, Diana, continues to grow. And with that, I guess I could turn it over to Christina. Yeah, thank you.
I did not prepare a speech.
Me neither.
I feel like I'm on 60 Minutes with this lighting.
So how do you feel?
But it was so nice to see what you put up, Diana, because I feel so happy and proud that I know a lot of that information. I don't know as much as you do, and I don't quite as much as Deborah, but I'm getting there. You know, I grew up here, and I grew up on a golf course in Hialeah, which is like the last place you think. Actually, right next to where they're supposed to build that horrendous mall. Oh, yeah. We really hope it's not happening. So it's like the last place you think. But, you know, I grew up going to the Everglades, and I was always just a wild thing no matter what. Like, I can find nature no matter where I am. So I'd still be, like, knee-deep in the canals, you know, going for frogs and horrifying my parents. But, you know, growing up here, like, you don't learn that much about the actual ecosystem of Florida, and that's a huge problem. It was a much bigger problem then, but it's still a huge problem. People don't seem to realize what, you know, the actual landscape here is about. They still think it's beaches and palm trees and all that kind of stuff. So absolutely the focus of my artwork is always trying to share with, like, great excitement and enthusiasm how deeply I feel about how spectacular and special the Florida ecosystem is. And that's, like Deborah said, that's where all of my inspiration comes from. It starts and it ends there. Damn, Loop Road is busy these days. Have you been there? I was there like a few weekends ago, and I was like, I can't believe all the cars out here. So it's good. I'm glad. At the same time, I go out there to be by myself, so I gotta find my other spots. But, you know, I really got to go further in depth, actually, because of Deborah, who you know as an artist, but you don't know, used to be the director of the Artist in Residence in the Everglades program, which I did back in 2015. So I got to spend a month out there. And, you know, it really was a life-changing experience. You know, I'd been visiting the Everglades all the time, but to have the experience of the sense of human habitation. You know, we're used to thinking of national parks and these places as places you visit, but not places that people lived in and that people have lived in for thousands and thousands of years. And that's such a huge part of Florida's history that gets forgotten. You know, we tend to think it was this wild place that white people came and developed 100 years ago. But of course, it has habitation that goes back as far as anywhere else in the United States, practically. And so that understanding of how humans have occupied and how we can still occupy and how we can still be a part of it, and is something that I carry with me, that informs my art, and that I'm always trying, first and foremost, to make my practice an effort to get you out there and to realize that that is what real life is. That is what Florida really is. It's not what's inside this room. This is just white noise, you know. That's where it's all about. So, is that enough?
Can you, no, it's a perfect, but can you talk a little bit about the deer and estate piece? The three panels that we have. Yeah.
So speaking of long habitation, I've done a couple residencies at the Deering Estate, which is an absolutely wonderful place to visit. If you haven't been, it seems like a long way from here. But it's, it's, you know, was the brother of James Deering of Biscaya, a much more famous location. He was further south. It's a much more subtle place. It's actually a biological station, a historical home. It has one of the last pine rockland, large stands of pine rockland left. And it's one of the only places where you can sit on the water and look in all directions and not see development, which is pretty spectacular. So it's a really special place to my heart. And it also happens to have an archaeological site called Cutler Fossil Site, which is the most important archaeological site south of Lake Okeechobee that proved when it was discovered, of course, people knew it was there, discovered by white people, that it had proved that there had been human occupation here for 10,000 years. So it's a 13-foot sinkhole. So that's part of what my depiction out there that you'll see on the wood panels is about. It's just an absolute like magical portal into the past. Not only human occupation, of course, but a whole magical array of am I not thinking of the right word? Dinosaur era, paleo era. Animals like, you know, woolly mammoths and mastodons and giant sloths and things that I just had absolutely no idea were in Florida. So, you know, it proves that, you know, we deserve a place in history as much as the pyramids and the redwoods. And, you know, it's a lot more demure here. That's the thing about the Everglades, you know, it's not Yosemite, it's not Yellowstone, you know, but it was the first national park that was to protect ecosystem as opposed to geology, right? Which Deanna can talk about that a lot more with her geology background. But it was understood to be so spectacularly unique that it deserved protection as a living thing. And so I love it.
Thank you. Thanks, Christina. You've done a fantastic job even without having a full speech prepared.
Yeah.
Jenna.
Yeah.
Last but not least.
I'm Jenna Efrein, and I am an artist and educator. I teach at the University of Miami. I teach glass there, which is I'm not showing here. But there's a part of my practice. Which is a big part of, has become a big part of my practice, which is I community source the raw materials for my work. And the piece that you'll see out there is community source plastic bags that I've sewn together to create a Great Pacific Garbage Patch, because I want people to know what it feels like to be an animal underneath the two Great Pacific Garbage Patches. So that's the concept behind, or the inspiration for that. Because when I learned about it, I was, you know, a long time ago, and just sort of astonished that that exists. And to bring it actually to the paper most recently, I was reading about how microplastics in the ocean are binding with the snow in the ocean, and the plastics are causing the snow that the various different animals eat to fall faster to the ocean floor. So they're coating the ocean floor, so they're sort of adding a layer of sediment of like just the, you know, human involvement in this planet, and they're also creating food starvation zones for different animals that normally get to filter through and eat this the snow that sort of floats through the ocean. So it's causing a lot. So normally where there would be the the plastic, which would normally float, because the various different microorganisms attached to it, it falls down a lot heavier, but sometimes some of it falls off and then it floats back up, so it does this yo-yoing thing, so it really messes with the food availability for different animals in the ocean. And I was just talking with an anthropologist the other day, and she was talking about how the clamshells that hold so much of our fruits that we get, or even spinach and such at the grocery store, are completely not recyclable, and they just get thrown away into landfills. So it's a big part of the problem that we're sort of impacting our earth in really negative ways, and how like it's getting to the point where because of the plastics that they say use in for the strawberry fields here, they'll lay down the plastics so the strawberry plants can come up through, and that erodes and becomes little like micro particles and ends up actually into the food and then into our own bodies. So these are all sort of negative things. We're becoming plastic. It's a problematic cycle. And with the piece, my overall desire is that people will bring their own bags when they go to the stores, or have a small folded bag in your bag, so when you go and buy something in like a smaller store, instead of taking the bag, that you have your own small bag that you can put it into. And it's there's a whole variety of bags that you'll see in there. Some of them say like this is recyclable, and then there's the wonderful umbrella bags, which I think are kind of crazy pants. The idea of having a wet umbrella sticking in a bag, and you know, that whole process. I, unlike these ladies, grew up actually in Brooklyn, New York, so quite opposite. But with that, when I first like kind of went off to college, and initially I went to Vermont, and I was like, it's like a Renaissance painting. I was waiting to walk into a canvas wherever I went, and that sort of started a real love for nature. And I've lived in a lot of different places, and whenever I go to a new place, I always look, for me, like nature is my church. It's where I go and I find peace, I find calm, and I find like an overall sense of love. So when I first moved here, I was like, where can I go and get out into the environment? So I went out to the Everglades. I discovered the Loop Road, it, you know, by just going there and going to the different ranger stations and just reading the local news, it became really obvious and apparent to me all the environmental issues. Just before I moved here, I started working with bottle glass and using that in my own work, and figuring out how I can manipulate it, crush it, blow it in the hot shop, and fuse it and bend it, and do all sorts of different things with it. And so my work has really evolved a lot, sort of very organically and naturally in this direction, sort of pulling the different things that I love, a material that I love to work with, and also a place where I find the most peace and happiness. And I would happily say, yes, I've noticed the Loop Road is a lot busier. I was out there recently.
Fancy cars.
I find it.
Now you all behave.
Yeah.
Okay. No big caravans.
Yeah.
Don't wear flip-flops.
Carpool. Along the Loop Road, there's a trail that shoots off from it called Gator Hook, which I've hiked several times, and I get yelled at by various friends when I go out hiking there by myself. But I hike, my hiking stick is a crutch. It's an old aluminum crutch, and I like it because I can wave it in front of me to deal with the cobwebs, and should I unfortunately sprain my ankle, I have a crutch. But I recently went out there with a friend of mine, and I finally made it to the end, because I've hiked several times and never really made it all the way to the end. It didn't really matter to me. What mattered to me was time spent out in the environment. And that's what mattered to me. If I hit the end or not, it didn't matter. And I've definitely slogged out with water up to my waist at various points, and it's really just magical. And my friend I was hiking with was going through a lot of various stressful, traumatic stuff, and he was just talking the whole time. And then we hit a certain point where there's a bunch of like cypress, and I'm like, I imagine that at night fairies are zooming through here and are having races. And he just was like, you're crazy. And I'm like, but really, we're not here.
It's the loudest at night.
Yeah.
Everglades, it's so loud at night. The animals are amazing.
Yeah. And so, you know, I just, for me, it sparks like imagination and fantasy and inspiration. And So it's really a beautiful place, as well as like anywhere that I travel, I'm always looking to get out into the nature of that particular place and see how the animals and the ecology and the plant matter and how that is all different, to really sort of be present with the land of the place, and not just always the development. So, because I think that we need more of that. I need more of that in my life. I would like everyone else to have that as well as our future generations. So, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. So, quick question. Who has been in the Everglades? Raise your hands. Who's? Okay, that's good. Okay, so we have a good, I would say 50%.
And if you haven't, we're signing you up for the field trip.
Exactly. See us outside, and we'll be happy to be your guide. So I know it's already 7, and do we have time for a little Q&A in case, or 5 minutes? Perfect. So any questions from the audience for either of these fantastic speakers tonight? Yes, please.
Diana. Oh, of course. Yeah, the only thing that you don't want to look at straight from with that is the sun. But everything else is fine. It's really reflected light. You know, some of it is reflected, and yeah, it's totally fine. So yeah, and yeah, and I'll recommend. I'll just make one tiny little plug. Is that on April 30th, between April 22nd and April 30th is Dark Sky Week, and April 30th, the Everglades National Park is going to be doing a night sky program at Shark Valley.
Oh,
so
fantastic.
just go look in their website.
And that's the spot.
To be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're going to have telescopes and all kinds of things. So, okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Please. Okay. So the question is, what is the government not doing to help the Everglades? Oh, wow.
Well, they're taking too damn long. And
Exactly. So, Diana, you want to?
I don't know. I don't want to take that one. We'll go on and go on. I'll give them
too depressing.
I'm just going to pipe in and
Yes.
say, as most of you know, there are a lot of agencies involved in SERP, in Everglades restoration, and that's not a horrible thing. Why not have everybody's interests represented? Good thing. However, it has delayed the process quite a bit. And I think that it's very interesting, maybe certainly from the Sierra Club's point of view, to see who's getting the ear of the Army Corps of Engineers. It's a very complicated matter, but I would say the issue is there are a lot of fingers in the pie.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are.
I would
and
add.
this is why, again, the more, you know, what is that? The saying, the squeaky wheel gets the oil kind of thing. We have to make lots and lots of noise, you know. So, you know, so they, you know, I have to give them credit for the, you know, like she said, there's different parts. Some of it, you know, I think one of the most amazing, real, like really, truly nature-based ecosystem restorations that ever happened was the Kissimmee Valley.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the way that, you know, it got straightened, and then, you know, just a few years later, they realized, oh my God, what have we done? And they made it into kind of this meandering thing again, and it's incredible. It's one of the prime examples of what a truly nature-based ecosystem restoration can be. But not all of the projects are exactly like that.
It's a huge thing. I mean, Florida is like the biggest Army Corps of Engineer projects like in the world, you know. I will add that if, as a plug for Friends of the Everglades, if you really want it broken down for you really well and easily and super up to date, they do an amazing job. They've all through COVID been doing these clean water Zoom conversations that are fantastic. They break down the legislation, the bills, all that kind of stuff extremely well.
I actually so Friends of the Everglades is actually an organization that was founded by Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, and as Christina said, they've had this fantastic clean water conversation. I was just listening to the one about Senate Bill 2508 before our panel today. If, I don't know if anyone knows what the Senate bill is, but it's probably a very long conversation, but it's something that was kind of snuck in just at the end of this session, where essentially it gives more power to the agricultural land. And when we talk about agriculture, usually we think about big sugar around the Lake Okeechobee that essentially is entitled to have more water and sort of more control over how the water is released or not, and sort of taking that water away from the restoration plan and sort of bringing it back down to the Everglades. So it's a very long and sort of complicated story, but there is an amazing conversation on the Friends of the Everglades website that is just specific to the Senate bill that I think it's really breaks it down in a very easy and accessible way. And, you know, we were talking a couple of days ago with Sophie and Tanira here about what can everybody do, right? I mean, you as individual, and the first thing is vote. Be informed, vote. Vote for your state representative, for your local representative, because it really starts in your backyard. And so try to be informed, read the newspaper, and just sort of make your voices heard. Okay, so they're giving me signs like this. I think it's time to go and have a drink, and please stay for the opening. We're here. If you have any questions, feel free to come up to us. Don't be shy. And again, thanks everybody for coming tonight.
Thank you.